Hello. Hi, everybody, and welcome to our March meeting. Happy St. Patrick's Day. We have a few announcements before we get started. The first is I'm announcing that there's a propagation meeting the 26th of March. It's a Saturday. It'll be at 10 a.m. and it'll be at Norm's. And we'll be cleaning up plants there and putting them in order for our plant sale, which is coming in April. So if anybody is interested and did not get a notice that we're having a propagation meeting, let me know and we'll add you to the list and get the information to you. The second thing is our plant sale, which is coming up in April. And for that, I will introduce Don Winterstein and Lan Pham. Lan is taking over from Don, but they are both going to tell us about our plant sale.
Want to try without this?
The microphone will actually help for Zoom.
We've got Zoom people.
Okay. I'll do it for the benefit of Zoom. I've been in charge of our chapter plant sale for about 10 or 11 years. And it's now time to turn it over to somebody. You probably all know about our plant sale. There are so few people here. I assume you're regular attendees at our meetings, and so you know about our plant sale. It's the event that supports our chapter financially. It provides the major support we get for everything we do, including the rent and insurance and everything like that. Lan Pham, right here, is taking over from me. She actually volunteered. No arm twisting needed. Normally, it takes a lot of arm twisting to get somebody to do a job like this, until you find somebody with a weak arm, then they'll do it. But she volunteered, and she seems to be a very competent person. She organizes things well. She comes up with good ideas. And last year, she was an outstanding cashier at our plant sale. So she has a few things to say about our sale. So it's up to you.
Thank you, and it's very nice to meet everyone here. I'm sure you are all longtime members, so some of these things I'm saying will be repeated, and especially for all the new people that are joining us today as membership, okay? So just a reminder, we are looking for plants, so please donate your plants. Send in your list, make sure it's very clear that you list down how many you are giving away, what type of plants they are, what are the variety. If you can mention things like seedling, graft, or air laying, that would help. And then definitely send the list to Don. Don will let me know, and then we will write down what we have for the plant sale. So if you can do that as soon as possible, that will help us so that we are not waiting for the last minute to try to make the list and try to figure out how many plants we have, okay? And as for all the newcomers, a couple things, we do have a lot of tags, and for people here as well, if you would like to pick up tags, we have tags tonight. Just let me know how many you need. I can give it to you tonight. For those who are not able to join us tonight, definitely you can also email us, and then we can mail it out to you if you need that. If you don't want to do that, you can also label the container. Make sure you label it well as the tag. Make sure that you write the plant, what species it is or variety, and then definitely leave some room for us to write the price on there. But make sure that we can read it. Otherwise, we can't read it. We can't figure out what it is. Okay. And as for the tags itself, please use something that will kind of stick on there, because if it doesn't stick on there, we can't, if your fingerprint touch it, Unfortunately, these are kind of glossy, so it might erase the writing on there. The other thing we need is for people to be aware where they can drop off their plants. There are about 5 different places. We have one for Denny. Have Don, John, McNeil, Julie, Sally, and Tree. So those are the drop-off point. If you don't want to drop off there, you can also bring in the tree or plants on Thursday from 9 to 3, and then we can help you with that part. Okay. And the last thing is we're looking for volunteers. I know some people have already volunteered, but we're still needing volunteers for the sale. So if you're able to do it, we're looking for Thursday, possibly Saturday, and maybe a few on Friday. And I think we might need one more cashier if you are able to help with that part. It's a whole day kind of thing, so it's split in half a day. So it's between, I think, 8:30 to 12, and then 12 to 4 for the cashier. Anyone have any question or?
Question online, was asking if we could pick up tag propagation.
Okay, so we will definitely give you some tags and then, okay, and then you can distribute it.
I bought a whole roll of 2,000. And unfortunately, they may be inferior for our purposes.
I think you have them, right, on you? Or, oh, you,
They're-
have-
they're-
so they're white and they're kind of plastic.
They're glossy, but well, we don't necessarily stick with the color. These are white. Other colors are. Because I have purple and orange, and I just wanted to make sure. Okay, but we can use other colors. We have used other colors. They don't mean anything. Just so you can see the writing.
Okay. Okay, so if anyone else need tags tonight, please let me know and then I will just hand them out, okay? Any other question?
Was your email address on that message that went out? I can't remember, the one that went out about the sale to all members.
No, it was not. I made that up at the time when all of my emails to her went into her spam box. So I didn't know whether she was with us or not. I thought maybe when I sent her a list of everything we needed to do, and I thought maybe she panicked and went to some other county. So I didn't know she was still with me. Fortunately, she is. But her name didn't, her email address didn't get on that.
Okay, so if anybody has any questions, they can send them to you.
Yeah, for now, just send everything to Don, so it's easier since he been the one who been sending out all the emails. Then after that, then we can arrange the other part later, okay? Any other question? Yes.
So for, I know with the CRFG, California Food Growers, if I do something like ginger, I would go ginger root, would that be helpful?
Bring what?
Ginger.
Edible ginger root.
As long as they are fruit trees or plants that we can eat, then yes, you can bring them.
Yeah, it's not really.
Well, it is something edible, so yes, yes. Fruit trees or anything edible, then we can do that for plants as well. Any other question?
The idea is that if we sell things that don't have a culinary purpose, we have to pay tax. And we don't want to get involved with that.
Okay.
How have the relations been so far?
It's a little slow. It could speed up a little bit more by sending the list in. I know in the past, Don has mentioned that people sent in the list a little bit late. So it's kind of a crunch for the people who are trying to price it, trying to pick up the plants. So if you can send in your list early, that would definitely help us. And if you make it clear, like I say, how many plants, what variety, if it was grafted, airlay or seedling or what it is that you're sending in, then that will help us a lot. Otherwise, we have to email you back and say, oh, okay, so this, you send in 5 avocado, what are they? What type are they, right? So we need to know that part as well. And you need to tell us the size. The size is very important as well. And the height, I mean, the biggest size that you can send in or donate is 5 gallon. Please don't do anything bigger. In the past, I think there was some exception for at least 7 gallon, but right now 5 gallon is the best, because when the other people who buy them and they had to take it home and they can't fit in the car, then that's an issue, right?
The response from our donors has been very weak so far. So I was concerned that a lot of our donors were giving to the South Orange County chapter. So I got a little nervous and started sending emails to a few of our regular donors and said, are you going to be giving plants this year? And expecting them to say, no, I'm going to give them to the South County this year. But fortunately, that didn't happen. And I think we're going to have a good supply of plants to sell. Some of them will no doubt go to the South County, but I don't think it will be enough to hurt us.
Well, I know last year the sale went really well, really fast, and there was a lot of plants. We're hoping this year we also get a lot of plants, and then everything run as smoothly as last year.
We could have sold even more. I mean, our lack of plants is what showed in our sale.
Hmm.
We sold so many plants that we, zero early. Yeah, so we need.
So please send them in as early as you can, okay? So start with at least get the list going to Dawn, and then after that, you can spend the time. You have about close to a month to get your plants all ready to go. And you already know the 5 drop-off points, okay? All right, I don't think we have any other question, right? Okay, I'm gonna give this back to Martha.
Thank you. One thing I wanted to mention was our speaker tonight, Gary, has brought some ground cherries that are on the table over there that you can pick up. Also, Charlie has brought some grape cuttings. They're the NY 47616 that he grows, and it's a really good tasting grape. And we also have some cherimoya and atamoya seeds over on the table. And there are also a couple of either grapefruit or pomelo. I don't know where those came from. Who brought those? Who? Oh, you brought those also? Oh, you did. Okay, great. Thank you. So those are over on the table and available if you want to pick one up. The what? What about them? Oh, Charlie, right here. So he can tell you all about them. Following up on the discussion about the plant sale, we need to approve the expenditures for the plant sale. And at the board meeting, we discussed it and itemized what the various things are. We need to rent a fence and we need to rent the truck and other, the usual expenditures. It was approved at the board meeting that we would spend up to $2,250 to run the sale this year. And so I will need a vote of the members here present as well as the members on Zoom to approve that expenditure that the board has approved. So if there are any questions, feel free to speak up or to submit them online. Yes? I'm sorry? $2,250.
So is that a rough figure or is that we sat down and figured out this is what it would cost?
That's Don's approximate exact cost. And it's not exact because of course, you know, we will have taxes and so on, but that's what we've spent in the past. And it's not beyond what we have spent in the past. And that's estimated what it'll cost this year.
We expect there's a fair
Yeah. But not to exceed $2,250.
Gas will move into that this year.
Hmm?
Gas prices will move.
Oh, yeah, gas has gone up. Everything has gone up. So if there are there any questions from the Zoom people?
What was our revenue last year from the same event?
Where's John? You'll have to check with John.
Our revenue cover our expenses?
And then some.
Our gross was over 13,000.
So I would like to, I'd like to have a vote of those present to approve the expenditure of not more than $2,250 to run the sale this year in April. All those in favor, raise your hands. And online, you can raise your hand. And Ty is going to be watching that. Okay, and it looks like, are there any opposed? Oh, good, that passed. Laura, I will, two things that I wanted to mention. We do have the Orange County Fair coming up this year. We still do not have a chair for our booth at the fair. And so if any of you would consider being the chair for the booth at the fair or working on the committee, if you would submit your name to any of the board members, we would be happy to talk to you. Also, in the future, it's a few months down the road, we may need a chair for the Scion Exchange. Although Dick did that in this past year, did a great job, thank you. And if he would like to continue, we'd be happy to have that happen. Oh, terrific. Erase what I just said, except the part that he did a great job. Also coming up, we will have elections. Laura's going to handle the elections for us this year. And I would like to mention that we still need someone to volunteer for secretary and be elected as secretary. I have been secretary for the last 2 years. I have to say, I think it's the easiest job on the board. It's really simple. The only thing that you have to do is take the minutes at the board meetings and here at the chapter meetings if there are any votes that are taken. And you transcribe the minutes and you submit those to the board members. So it's not a difficult job and it's not time consuming. And I'd like to encourage anybody who's interested to let us know if you're interested. And with that, I will pass it on to Laura. What? Oh, sorry. Thank you. Lauren Hutain is our new librarian, and she brought some books that she will tell us about, and they are available for checkout.
I don't know if any of you know, but CRFG has a great selection of books in the library, so I hold on to them. I brought some books in the back. Gary's talking about strawberries, so I brought books in the back on managing your greenhouse and caring for your berries, nuts, fruits, pests. Spider mites always seem to get into the strawberries, so there's a book about pest management back there. But if you want any sort of books or are looking for a particular book or author, please email me and I can go through the collection and see what we have. We also have access to all of the, I think for the past 10, 15 years, all of the published CRFG magazines. So articles, if you want an article, some random article that was published 10 years ago, we probably have it and I can find it for you. So just email me. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. And with that, I will turn the meeting over to Laura, and she will tell us about our elections, and she'll conduct the elections.
So this is my parliamentarian hat, not my membership committee hat. So we are lucky to have membership that is willing to volunteer. And this past 2 years has just been amazing that folks had no idea what they were taking on 2 years ago when they said that they would become the chair, the vice chair programs, secretary and treasurer. And John McNeil, who is in the Philippines tonight, he did an incredible job of keeping us all together, keeping us active, and having us really enjoy still CRFG. And then Ty came up with people from all over the world and figured out how we could all meet on Zoom. And so we really appreciate that we were able to meet. We increased our membership because so many people were so wanting to hear about fruit still. And they joined our group because we were having Zoom meetings. So we have members from up and down the state. Actually, in January, we got a new member from Virginia. So they're spread out all over the country also. So we want, and then Martha did secretary and kept us on track with the minutes and keeping our meetings going for the board meetings. And John Marzolino as treasurer came up with ways to make us not only solvent, but keeping us on track and with our budgets and with all of the banking information, so that we were able to then, we are doing so well as a club. That's why we were able to have anybody who signed in their applications online to have a free year chapter membership. So we want to thank the board members, the executive board members from the last 2 years for doing an incredible job. And we're looking forward to this coming next 2 years with our new board members. The nominating committee had met and they came up with a slate of officers that they presented at the February board meeting. And the board of directors for OCCRFG then approved the slate of officers. And those folks are, as chair, Khaled Hassan; as vice chair of programs, Jeffrey Warner; and as continuing as treasurer, John Marcelino. Our treasurer can be treasurer for up to 4 years. Notice I skipped right over secretary because that still is somebody that we would love for someone to volunteer. So let's go ahead and have our elections. Are there any nominations from the floor or from Zoom for chair? All right. Are there any nominations from the floor for program chair? Are there any nominations from the floor for secretary? I'll wait. Anybody online? We're waiting. Are there any nominations from the floor for treasurer? Right, nominations are now closed. We will now hold our elections. All those in favor of Khaled Hassan for chair, say aye. Those opposed, no. Congratulations, Khaled. You are now the chair of OCCRFG. All those in favor of Jeffrey Warner for program chair, say aye. Those opposed, say no. Yeah, wonderful. The ayes have it. And Jeffrey, congratulations as our program chair. All those in favor of John Marcelino as treasurer, say aye. Any opposed, say no. Great. Okay, the ayes have it. And John, you're still our treasurer. Congratulations. We are very fortunate that Martha has agreed to kind of continue for a few weeks as secretary until somebody does volunteer, and we'll keep looking for folks. So if any of you are interested in being secretary, please go ahead and give Sally Holly a call or email. Her name is on the back of the newsletter, so you can contact her as chair of the nominating committee, and we can have a vote again next month for secretary. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura. Now I'll turn the meeting over to Ty, and he can talk about our upcoming meetings that he has scheduled and also introduce our speaker for tonight.
Hey, everyone. Hey, everyone online too. We got some Zoom participants. We have almost 20 people on right now. So it's a good turnout in-house and online. So tonight we have Gary Matsuoka. But before I get to you, we'll have our new vice chair taking over. And so for April, he'll be lining up a speaker, and seems like everything's going to be rolling now in person here at the church. So we will have this as like our new rhythm that we can get back into, which I'm looking forward to, because it was definitely a lot of ups and downs and all arounds with meeting at the OC Great Park and online and here and then all of it. So I think this will be, especially on the Zoom production side, I think it'll be a lot more stable. It seems like we've got the audio figured out. We've got some video going. Feel free for Zoom, you can shout out questions, same for the audience online, and we'll get to those as we can. But for this month, we've got Gary coming all the way from Laguna Hills Nursery. Do you live in Laguna, Gary? Oh, right. Yeah. So you moved locations to Santa Ana, right? Yeah. So anyways, Gary's here. He's been a nurseryman for a very long time. Second generation nurseryman, and sells ornamentals, sells fruit trees, sells strawberries, and many other delights for the garden. And he's been willing to come here many times, and also has his garden classes that many of our members have attended. And so thanks for coming again. Tonight is going to be on strawberries. Thank you. Thanks, Gary.
Thank you. It's actually good to be anywhere these days. Nice to be out again. Okay, so we're talking about strawberries today, and it is probably Orange County's second most valuable crop, after weed. It's the second most valuable, because I've had relatives who made their fortunes in Orange County in the 60s growing strawberries. So we know that in fact, some farmers I know, they grow many crops, but they said they rotate their crops so they can get back to growing strawberries. That's their money maker. They grow cabbage and beans, but the stuff that makes money for them is strawberries. So anything is, where do they come from? So this is kind of weird. People have been on Earth for a couple 100,000 years, and cultivation of strawberries has been going on for supposedly only a few hundred years, but there's some weird genetics out there. So if let's draw somewhat of a map of North America here, South America, Europe, Asia, Africa. The strawberry species that we use for modern strawberries are found in Europe, Asia. Nothing's coming from Africa. And then there's an Eastern North American species, and then there's a species that's found all along the west coast of North and South America. So supposedly the strawberry that they got the taste from, I'll just write this once, Fragaria vesca, is the alpine strawberries from Europe. That's these. So smaller leaves, smaller fruit, highly tasteful, but they said the problem with Fragaria vesca is the fruit was mostly greenish, creamish, a little bit of pink in it, not much color. So when the colonists in North America found Fragaria virginiensis, I'll just make it that way, it had larger red berries, very colorful. Not necessarily all that tasty, but very colorful. So they started breeding those two together. And then in South America, they found Fragaria chiloensis in Chile. And these had size and better, bigger leaves. So the modern strawberries today kind of have the bigger glossy leaves of chiloensis versus the smaller quilted foliage or matte foliage of Fragaria vesca, but they got the size from the chiloensis. And then someone found in California some of the offspring of, or variants of chiloensis that had a second crop. So they got the ever-bearing strawberries from the genetics over here. Now, what's really weird is Fragaria vesca, the European stuff, is diploid, which is normal. That's what we are. We're diploid. We have two sets of chromosomes, but both virginiensis and the chiloensis are octoploid, which is really odd. 8 sets of chromosomes. That's why the berries are big. It's like, how did that happen? Scientists can do that in labs with certain chemicals to create that. But how did these things in nature found like that? It's like, okay. I mean, you kind of wonder, we've been around for 20,000 years. It only took us a couple thousand to figure out how to do the genetics. Were there people living a long time ago that did this for us? Don't know. But there's a lot of crops out there that have really weird genetics. But strawberry is one of the weirdest. Octoploid, 8 sets of chromosomes. That's a lot. That's how they're so big. Some of these get so big. Anyway, they crossed them back and forth. There was a lot of crossing done in England, and most of the modern crossings have been done in California since around 1890s. They started doing a lot of work on strawberries because we're the perfect climate here, especially coastal California, because strawberries produce flower and fruit best between 35 and 85 degrees. So, the east part of the country gets too hot too soon. So the strawberries stop producing by summer, whereas on the west coasts of North and South America, they can pretty much go all the way through the year. So, okay, so now there's 3 different categories of strawberries that are sold. So farms, the farms in Orange County and San Diego County, the advantage they have in the US or around the world, well, in the US primarily, is that we're the only places in the United States that can harvest strawberries in November, December, and January. Florida hits the market by the end of January. But Orange County and San Diego County, they've got that market. That's why you see them planting so many strawberries in Orange County still. It's a fabulous market to be able to do it that soon. Now they're using spring-bearing strawberries. So the 3 categories: spring-bearing, ever-bearing, and day neutral. Day neutral and ever-bearing are almost the same thing. So spring-bearing strawberries, they'll bloom heavily in the winter all the way through. Well, we'll catch on that a little bit. So their main crop is spring. and real heavy in the spring. And then once you get to July, they just stop blooming, and that's it for the year. Some of those last berries will ripen early August, but it's from the July bloom or the late spring bloom. And then the everbearing ones will make a crop at the same time the spring bearers will, but they'll do it again in early fall. The day neutral ones don't care what time of year it is, they'll just keep making flowers if the temperature is below 85. If the daytime highs are below 85, they'll just keep going. So most people want the day neutrals, although they do say that the spring bearers make the biggest fruit and make the most in the spring of all the, so if you want lots of big berries in the spring, it's almost better to get the spring bearing. But if you want them all year, of course, you got the day neutrals. And we don't know which, there's not as many of the everbearers out there, although, so some of the names, you know, back in the 60s, Sequoia, 60s and 70s, even to today, Sequoia was the big name out there. Spring bearer, big berries. They're too soft for commercial use, more for U-pick farms and for homeowners. But that was one of the first modern strawberries. But in the 80s, they made one called Chandler, and Chandler is still big across the country for a spring bearing strawberry. So that name is still out there. Commercially, they do mostly Camarosa, Ventana. So this is what the local farms grow mostly, Fronteras. And a lot of these have good shipping ability too, which is not necessarily great for us, but good for the stores. And then the everbearing, you'll see names like Ozark, Quinault. But our day neutral ones that we saw a lot of, now the big one that came out almost 20 years ago is Albion. So Albion is like the strawberry that everything's compared to nowadays. Even University of, or the United Kingdom, some of the universities there said Albion's the best thing that California ever sent to us. So it's a real big everbearing or day neutral strawberry, red all the way through. Very conical shape, very evenly shaped, like you don't get the wedgy ones or the slope shoulder ones. You get all these real conical berries, so they pack real well, they said. They ship well, and they got great flavor. So Albion 10, 15 years ago was the strawberry to sell. But what happened was it was found to be somewhat lacking in production because it sent out a whole bunch of runners. Now, the runners, which make the new plants, supposedly that's one of the reasons they're called strawberries, because they make so many runners on the ground, looks like straw. So there's other reasons they think that strawberries are called strawberries, but that's one of them. They said on a farm with strawberry plants, you got so many runners going all over the place, it looks like the ground's covered with straw. Anyway, so Albion is supposed to make kind of excessive amount of runners. So they developed offspring of it. One is Sweet Ann, which we think is our best strawberry at the moment. University of California developed one called Cabrillo, and they said that's the best one at the moment. These two are both really good. You know, I've grown most of the modern strawberries, and you know, you're eating them, you go, okay, this is really good, and you eat the next one, you can say the same thing. It's like you can't tell them apart that much. It's more of a commercial or a farm problem than it is a homeowner problem, because they all taste really good. They do say Monterey is the sweetest and largest berry of the everbearers, but it's really hard to tell them apart. And there's San Andreas, which we sell sometimes too. San Andreas has the lowest, one of the lower chill requirements. So the chill on strawberries is not much. It's, I don't know, if it's a couple hundred hours they need of chill. to encourage the next year's bloom to get going. But for people who need an early crop, if you're overwintering, if you keep strawberry plants more than 1 year. So strawberry plants can be productive for 1 to 4 years. That's their lifespan. They make babies during the meantime. And if you keep them from year to year, the lower the chill factor is, the chill requirement is, the sooner your berries will get into heavy spring production. So, you know, like what the farms do here is they're planting in September and October the strawberry plants like Camarosa that were grown up in the Sierra foothills. And they're also, you know, when they're harvested, these runners are harvested, they are put into a refrigerator. So they get all their chill before the farmers get them. So they plant them in the ground in Orange County in the middle of October. They've already been in the refrigerator for a month or so. So they put them in the ground and they just start their spring crop right now. So if you want the longest crop, it's almost like you should buy berries every year that are already chilled. You know, they're not expensive. The plants aren't expensive, because if you leave them in your garden, then they go through a low period of no production, not much production, all the way until late winter, early spring. Now this year we had a very early winter. My strawberry, these are strawberries I had since last year. They've been fruiting for a month already. So that's very early. Some years you don't get your good spring crop until April or so. And in other parts of the country, it's like May and June when they get their spring crop. But this year we had a very early chill. We're thinking this winter was at least 350 hours of chill. I don't know if you folks have, because we're seeing Asian pears in our nursery flowering. We haven't seen that since 2008. An Asian pear blooming in our nursery. So we think the chill was real good this year. Anyway, back to strawberries. So the farmers get them in the ground and they get that early crop in November, December, make a lot of money. They pull out the plants usually around June or July when they become less productive, and then get ready for the next year. Now there's, of course, 2 ways to grow anything nowadays, or more than 2, but the conventional farming, which is, supposedly being done less and less these days. So in Irvine, where the soil is in areas where the soil is real sandy, they do the berms and the walk paths between the two. They have an irrigation hose down the middle. They'll have a row of strawberries on this side, row of strawberries this side. Now, conventionally, what they do is they make these, even though they have nice sandy soil, they'll make these berms about 18 inches high and then cover them with plastic. Now, if it's conventional farming with chemicals, they'll cover it with clear plastic. But we don't see as much of that anymore. But you cover with clear plastic. The clear plastic lets the sunlight's energy through, but the heat can't come out. So that soil is cooking underneath that clear plastic. It is really warm underneath there. We've had customers try that at their house, and they said, there's no way this works, because if you just do it without fumigation, it's just a forest of weeds growing underneath that clear plastic. They just all grow. I mean, the strawberries don't have a chance. So the farmers that do clear plastic and they get that earliest crop possible, they're fumigating between crop, right before the crop. So they lay the plastic over, put the gas underneath it, fumigate it, sterilizes all the soil, killing last year's strawberry diseases, the weed seeds, everything that can that can persist in the soil. And then they cut the plastic, lay it down over the thing, get the plants planted. They punch holes in the plastic, put the bare root in the ground. Brought some bare roots. We saw these for 69 cents. So that's a big bare root plant. Roots down here, leaves up here. We get a case of 1,000 at a time. This would be like the smallest one in there, and this would be like the biggest one. So there is range in size. We usually plant these ourselves because we're not sure every one of these will survive. So we put them in bigger, small pots to sell later. But our homeowners get the bigger strawberry plants like this. Sometimes, if you get a seascape bare root, they have roots a foot long. Those things are real vigorous. This is Sweet Ann. So they punch a hole in the plastic, drop them in the soil. Now the farms, they water with the drip system, but when they plant this stuff, their field's so dry, they turn on the sprinklers for at least 5 hours, 4 or 5 hours, get everything nice and wet, and they'll use their drip system from that point on. So the organic farmers have to rotate their crops because there's so many diseases and pests left by each crop that you've got to grow a whole bunch of unrelated things in between. And we leased land next to this farm, organic farm, for 4 years. Never saw them plant strawberries twice in 4 years. They told us they were on a 10 crop rotation cycle. So that rotation cycle is taking at least 4 years. So they cover in black plastic because they don't fumigate. So they have to stop the weeds from growing. So black plastic doesn't warm the soil quite as much as clear does. So their crops aren't quite as early, but it's still, it keeps the soil a little bit warmer, keeps the bugs off the fruit a little better too. Now, in my house, we grow everything in containers because if I put them on the ground, the pill bugs eat my strawberries. Now, there's other ways you can deal with pill bugs. We found you can put little plastic cups in your garden, drop the flowering stem with the fruit on it into a cup. And apparently the pill bugs don't know cups have something good inside. So, but still there's a lot of other pests. But anyway, so strawberries do like well-drained soil, which means not that the water is a problem. They need a lot of oxygen in their root zone. So when you have good draining soil, the water drains out, allows the air to fall behind so the roots can breathe better. The water district knows to put 5 parts per million to 7 parts per million water of oxygen, parts per million oxygen in water, so that you won't kill your plants when you water them with tap water. So the roots need at least that much oxygen. Now, strawberries may be a little higher than that. We know pear trees can go down to 2 parts per million, but strawberries like a lot more air in them at least to be vigorous. So in Irvine, with the real good sandy soil they have by the riverbeds there, they make these things 18 inches high. Now there is a farm in the Central Coast that's on clay soil, like near our coast here, Fountain Valley and Los Alamitos, real bad clay over there, but perfect climate to grow strawberries. So on this farm, they make these things 36 inches high to make that clay drain, as well as 18 inches on sandy loam. So they have videos of kids running through their fields, and you can see about this much of their head. So you can grow strawberries in clay, you just have to raise them twice as high to get that same drainage going. So anyway, strawberries was one of the first plants that we did soil testing back in the early 90s because I don't know if anyone, some of you are old enough. So in those days we had Whitney Farms and Super Soil and Bandini were the big names of potting soils. Maybe I shouldn't say the brand names. Some of them are still around, but we were having such poor success, I would say, growing plants in pots in those days, that we listened to a research scientist from NASA talking about soil. He says, "You guys don't know what you're doing." And because I had such lousy luck growing plants in pots in those days, fine in the ground, but you put them in a pot, put them in Super Soil or any of the other brands of potting soils, they'd sit there and do nothing. So I listened to him and he says, this is, you can't grow plants in compost. And so one of our first tests was I used strawberries because we knew strawberries were delicate plants. So we had these about 18-inch pots, and we put at that time the most well thought of potting soil was Whitney Farms Uncle Malcolm's blend. So we put a strawberry in there, and we got a strawberry plant that was about 8 inches wide with leaves like that. And then we made a pot of sand. Strawberry plant was 2 foot across. We're going, okay, we're selling poison. So in those days, this is the early 90s, we're going, okay, we got to make our own potting soil. So we started making our own potting soils back then and have never stopped, because we know the other potting soils out there, with a few exceptions, don't give good results. I mean, there are some potting soils that'll last a while, Fox Farm, Sun Grow, but none that can do, support good roots for more than a year or so. So anyway, we put this strawberry in pure sand so you can see how well it does. Now, strawberries in California and Chile were native to sandy areas. I mean, some of them are beach strawberries, just above the high tide mark. So, and I knew when I was back in the 80s, I had a sandbox. I bought a house with a sandbox, and my strawberries got in there, and they took over the whole thing in months. It was just nuts. So we know strawberries just love to be in sand. I'm good, thank you. But so, you talk to the farmers at the farmers markets, and these guys are telling us, oh, we got the world's richest soil right along the Santa Ana River. We can grow great strawberries. It's just sand. That's what they like. They're in that sand. So yeah, you want to grow beautiful strawberries. You can see the size of the leaves in the sand. Now, I only had 7 weeks to prepare for this talk, so this plant's a little bit young yet. In another month or so, it'd look a lot more impressive. But, in sand, we'll get plants close to 2 foot across. Yes.
So they like well-drained soil.
Yes, but you don't have, okay, so when you have well-drained soil, any soil, there's disadvantages and advantages. So with sand, you're only holding about a ½ inch of water per foot, whereas clay holds maybe 1.5 inches of water per foot. So clay, but in clay, the roots can only go down about 8 or 10 inches. In sand, they can go down 2 feet because they can breathe better. So you're really not losing anything as long as you apply the same amount of water, your root system goes deeper. Right. So it's not that big an issue. Now, most farms water daily anyway. They found out, University of California, Davis did a lot of studies in irrigation. They found out that daily light watering was much more efficient than once a week deep watering, and had no disadvantages that they can find at all. So, yeah, there's no disadvantage to lightly watering every day. So, and we have classes on that. Now, on this one, I put it in mostly pumice. And the problem with sand, of course, when we did our testing in potting soils, sand won all the tests, but you couldn't lift anything. And we knew it was so white that people wouldn't believe us. So we got the lightest version of sand, which is pumice rock, and mixed it with something that held water that looked organic, peat moss, and put them together, got our acid mix potting soil. We've been selling that ever since. So, so one of our potting soils is called acid mix. The other one's called top pot. Our acid mix looks like this, except it's a bigger bag and it says acid on it. 20 years ago, our soil distributor told us those are terrible names. That's the drug, that's now they say, oh, it's a great name, keep that name. So anyway, we have some strawberries here in different soils. Now this was the alpine, so it's smaller. This is almost straight pumice. So the more air you can get to the roots of a strawberry plant, or any plant really, that's as long as you water and fertilize air to the roots would be the last thing that would determine how fast the plant grows. The more air you can get to the roots, the more vigorous the plant. That's why hydroponics works so well, because they basically have rocks or clay pellets or things they use for the soil that are very permeable to air. I mean, the air goes right through them. So they have to water frequently, but they get the plants growing faster. Yes. Go ahead.
So you mentioned highly oxygenated water. Does that then influence your price of water? Like, would you not just drink if it's not oxygenated price system where it's like very small? Or does it not matter?
It does matter. So the amount of oxygen in the water, like they say in the wintertime, cold water holds more oxygen than warm water does. So if you're a hydroponic farmer, you got temperature sensors all over your water system, because you got to watch that water temperature. You can kill your plants if the water heats up too much. So it is nice to spray water. Right, but supposedly our water districts, they know this stuff. They have, sometimes you see the water come out of the faucets, it's real milky because they've been aerating it.
I thought that just also worked like doors, but my irrigation system.
Well, supposedly the guys the water people know what they're doing. So you should have enough oxygen in there. Yeah. Because they've had lawsuits in the past where they flood irrigated a farm with treated sewage water, killed the whole farm because there wasn't enough oxygen in the water. So okay, let's see. Now there are some more ornamental varieties of strawberries that are on the market too.
Sell
Oh,
off, so
Okay.
they get more room.
okay. But most of them, the plants aren't real exceptional looking. This is one with red flowers
Ooh.
called tarpan, but we grew this as well as we could, and it's really tiny. And the berries are small too, so it's ornamental, but it's not necessarily that great for eating. Now we do sell strawberries in 6-packs too. We have Sequoia, the still around, and that can, a friend of mine who used to, or my cousins who used to farm, said that some of the Sequoia berries would, 2 would cover the entire little quart pack. They sometimes get huge.
Okay, there you go.
Oh, cool.
Now there's some new pests out there that are really causing trouble. So to know we saw these last year and I think a little bit the year before. So the big pest name in all of the country now is thrips. Thrips are causing all kinds of problems. On strawberries, when you see the berries in the late summer, look like, instead of being red and lush, they look like dried sandpaper. That's thrip damage. So the thrips are very small creatures. I mean, if you draw one highly magnified, it looks skinny. The nymphs, the young ones are kind of amber colored. The adults are usually darker. The adults have some wings on them, but they're the size of slivers. The adults are, so the babies are really tiny, almost not visible, but they suck on the surface of things and they like soft things. So the skin of a strawberry is very vulnerable to these thrips. I mean, I would say last September, October, boy, the strawberries in my house look, well, you just wouldn't eat them. They were that bad. So the nice thing about nowadays, we have better organic pesticides. So the main one for thrips is anything that has spinosad in it. And that lasts about 2 weeks. So the in-between weeks, we hit them with something else, usually something with horticultural oils, which are also organic. So, you don't want to hit strawberries with chemicals because they absorb too much of it. It's bad news when you start doing that. So if you want to do spinosad 1 week and some form of horticultural oil the second week. Now thrips fortunately need heat to get going. You know, the worst thrip is the chili thrip, and we don't see that until we get some really hot weather. Last year was August, first sign of thrips, of the chili thrip. You know, fortunately we're not like Florida and Texas. They get hit by the chili thrip in May because they get so warm there so early, whereas we don't. You know, last year, I don't know if you think so, but last year was one of the coolest summers that we've seen. We couldn't get things to make fruit. I mean, normally we start fig cuttings in winter, and then by end of summer they got fruit on them. Nothing fruited until November, December from cuttings last year. It was a cool year. You know, from April on to August was just cool. Anyway, spinosad, horticulture oils, alternate them if you get thrips on your strawberries, and then that should keep them fairly clean. They're going through some real bad diseases in the deep south, so fortunately we're not down there. Nothing really happening here much. We get most of the disease problems when we have too much rain. Haven't had that for a while. Yes.
I don't know if these are different types of strawberries that when they flower like 5 or 6 clusters at a time. They all taste phenomenal, though small. I think there are some other varieties such as flower, so cycle. In your experience, the difference between flavor.
Right. Well, yeah. So the sizes on them, we noticed that the first spring, they make the biggest berries, and from that on, they get smaller and smaller. So as the plant ages, the berries just get smaller. If you're in the ground, they'll probably stay bigger longer because you got more root space in a pot. It's like the second year, they're already tiny because the problem we have, like, this is big enough for 1 year, but by the second year, there's no more clean dirt in there. There's too many dead roots, so it's making itself smaller and smaller. So
in terms of fruit thinning, not really practice.
No one talks about it. Yeah. Oh, didn't even mention that. Okay, that's good. So strawberry plants are propagated from the runners. Now the alpines don't make runners. So these guys are grown from seed. So you harvest the berry and you let it dry, and you kind of scrape the little seeds off the berries and start them. I mean, they're really tiny when they grow. And then within a year, they look close to this size. It might take 2 years from a seed to get that big. But the other strawberries are grown from runners, which are genetically identical. So that's how they clone. So these aren't cloned, although they can clone them. There are cloned alpines out there because there's a company down in Florida that does a lot of tissue culture cloning. These are just grown by the runners, genetically identical to the parent. So in the summer and fall, they make a lot of runners, and each one of these roots, and that's what you get. You get these are basically off the runners that grow in summer and fall. They pull them out of the ground, give them their chill, and then they send them to us. Well, Sunset Magazine said 2 weeks in the fridge is long enough. So that's only a couple hundred hours. 224 times 14, whatever that comes to. So, a lot of plants, they don't need much chill. So with strawberries, they said 2 weeks was good enough. But not in the freezer, in the fridge. Yeah, when we first did our first testing, we used water soluble stuff similar to what Miracle Grow would be and applied it every couple of weeks. Too much work since in our business. So we use a product called Osmocote at our store. We know that it's not organic, that it has its limitations, but because most organic fertilizers are powdery, and if you water, you hose them down every day, they kind of just blow away. So we use something a little heavier. So Osmocote now, the University of California said 14, 14, 14 is what they did a lot of testing with. All the research, they said they use Osmocote 14, 14, 14. We kind of go with 15, 9, 12 is the one we're using on all these. It seems to do just fine. But we've seen numbers like 10, 20, 20, higher in phosphorus and potassium. Now, in the ground around here, Orange County's got lots of phosphorus in the ground. So that number you don't have to worry about. The nitrogen is always the one that's leaving the area. So you always have to apply nitrogen, the first number. Potassium, we are low in, but once you put it down, it doesn't go anywhere either. So in the ground, you mainly think about the first number. Once you have the last number down, the middle number is there, and the last number doesn't go anywhere. There's micro and nutrients, also minor and micro, that generally we don't have to worry too much about. The Osmocote 15, 9, 12 does have 10 of the 13 nutrients that plants need to have added. So we just use that for ease. It's not for properness. I mean, in my own yard, in the ground, we go organic. That's the best way to do things, yes.
I just said that because I was thinking about the fertilizer focusing on the nitrogen. I was you want fruit, don't give it so much nitrogen because you still lose. But with strawberries, by that I think stay.
Well, nitrogen is one of the few things that farms always apply because it's always leaving. It doesn't stay there. Like phosphorus and potassium, once they're in the ground, they just stay there. They move so slowly. I heard potassium moves a 1/4 inch a year if it rains a lot, and phosphorus doesn't move at all. So nitrogen just evaporates as ammonia or leaches out as nitrates, so it doesn't stick around at all. So that's basically the fertilizer you have to add. Yeah. I mean, you can test your soil. Well, you're supposed to test the plant, not the soil. There is a plant lab in Orange County. You can send them stuff to test for you. So, yes.
How close would you plant strawberry plants to each other?
Well, that's a good question. I didn't even cover that. So the company that we get our strawberry plants from, they said it's anywhere from about 8 inches to 16 inches between crowns. And it depends, how many years you keep your plants. The longer you keep them, the closer they get together because they just fill in the area with the runners. They said 6 inches apart is like the minimum you should go. But you can see, with this plant here, if this continues growing, it'll be over 20 inches across. So.
The question on the Osmocote you use is the complete one.
Well, it's the one they call complete with 11, or I think it's got 10 minerals. It's not, it's not complete unless it's got 13, but you don't have to be complete if you're in the ground because the ground has so many of the micronutrients in it. Like they say, all ground, anything you plant in has nickel. I mean, it is the weirdest thing though. We've seen a lot of research articles lately in hothouses because they don't use real dirt, saying that, oh, you got to apply silicon. I mean, soil, sand, silt, and clay is mostly silicon. So if you garden the ground, you don't have to apply silicon, but they found in hothouses, yeah, you have to apply, especially the organic, which is the weirdest thing. If you're organic certified, you can't use dirt. If you're an organic certified nursery, you can't grow your plants in dirt. There's something wrong with that. You know, it's got to be recycled dead things that you're supposed to be using as your soil. It doesn't make sense to us what they're doing, you know, what some parts of our industry are doing, growing all your organic plants in dead stuff rather than real soil. But anyway, silicon dioxide is soil, so you're good. Any other questions? I'm pretty much, yep. Well, the osmocote coat is supposed to last 6 months. The one we use lasts 6 months. Most organic fertilizers, gosh, it really depends what you use. I remember I put chicken manure on a tree once and I didn't have to fertilize it for 3 years. I guess I put a lot down. You know, that's the hardest question to answer. The guys at the Soil and Plant Lab told me, we can't tell. You have to do a leaf tissue analysis to see if you're running out of fertilizer. So most farms have this regular thing, but no one knows how much fertilizer is in the ground. It's really hard to tell. There's no way unless you do all these expensive tests to figure out. And they said the best test is to do a tissue analysis, take a leaf off the plant and have it analyzed, because even if the ground has certain fertilizers, sometimes they're not available because of the chemistry of the soil. So you have to do a sample of the plant. Now farms can afford to do that, but I don't know any homeowners can. I mean, we're just always they told me we're always guessing what fertilizers your plants need. So all you can do, if you stay in the ballpark. So the U.S. Department of Agriculture sends farmers these numbers. They said if you're around 624, that's kind of the average crop in the U.S. That's what they need to add. Nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, that's about the ratio of growing plants, they said. So if you have a fertilizer like that, 624, 714, 725, somewhere in that range, you're pretty good. So one of our favorite fertilizers is 624 down to earth fruit tree fertilizer. It's about those numbers. Because phosphorus, even though it's important, it's not. Well, they said if you grind up a plant, you analyze what's in it, the ratios are more like 7:1:4. If you actually grind up the average plant and to see what it's made out of, it's about 7:1:4. So phosphorus is important, but it's not that, it's not needed in that much quantity. And a lot of things that they tell you about what fertilizers are meant to do, they don't give you the whole story. So phosphorus in our bodies is our energy transfer molecule. If you took biochemistry, adenosine triphosphate, adenosine diphosphate, that molecule transfers energy that you create when you burn sugar to where it's going, like your muscles or whatnot. So the phosphorus in a plant is also the same thing. It's an energy transfer molecule. It has nothing to do with making roots, making flowers. I mean, it's needed all over, but it's an energy transfer molecule. Nitrogen, of course, is membrane. So the membranes of a plant, our membranes, our skin, our hair, are all nitrogen. The potassium, its role is this a liquid. Our blood volume is there and it's balanced by potassium salts. Potassium doesn't do anything. It's just the salt of our bodily fluid. And same with plants. It's the salt of the sap and the juice and fruits is all balanced by potassium. So you need a lot of potassium if you want big fruit. You need more potassium. So, it's not, they shouldn't say leaves, roots, stuff like that. It's all needed at a certain ratio. Right, proteins are the membranes. So. Yeah, so that's whenever it rains, we get botrytis on, especially on the fruit, flowers and fruit. So strawberries are actually very disease prone. You know, that's why California does such a good job with them, because we don't have as much rain here. So what the farms do, especially the organic farms, is every day they walk out there, anything that's spoiling a leaf or a fruit, they pick off and throw away. Because, you know, there are fungicides for that, but nothing you'd want to eat. So they just clean the plants, constantly clean the plants. You see the guys walking around with buckets. Actually, it's 15-gallon containers are walking around with in the fields, and they're picking leaves and dead leaves off and dead and rotten berries off. They're doing that constantly to keep the crop nice. And when it rains, they have to do a lot of that. So that's basically it. I mean, you get the strawberries wet, they start rotting. So, and generally strawberry farms pick, they used to have to pick every 2 days when we had the real delicate strawberries. Now that they have the firmer strawberries, you see them at least twice a week picking fruit, because it won't sit in the field much longer than that. Yes.
I'd like to ask about the runners, the plants. If I have, say, a generation one plant, it sends out runners. Those plants would be generation 2.
Right.
They send out runners, I have generation 3. Do I have a difference in like fruit or vigorousness in successive generations? Do I lose anything, or does it stay consistent?
Well, okay, so the problem is every generation that's in this area is going to go downhill just because they've been in the soil a long time.
But the new runners are,
Yeah, if they can run far enough to get away from the old roots. So plants age, you know, they said plants age because their own dead root system kills them. And the longer they can make their roots, the longer they can live. So they say, you know, redwood trees can live 5,000 years because they can throw their roots out thousands of feet. But once they can no longer do that, or they encounter too many roots of their neighbors that are dead, then everything goes downhill quickly.
so if I put a runner in a pot of fresh soil,
Mhm.
and then transplant that elsewhere, I should be able to maintain the vigor.
Well, yeah, that's essentially what they're doing on the farms. I don't know what the rotation cycle is on these farms. They haven't said anything. It's like on the farms around here, it's at least 4 years before they plant strawberries in that same piece of farmland. Yes.
So you said that the strawberries don't like the dead roots. Is that unique to strawberries or other things? I'm thinking, oh, well, when I those, I dead organic matter. So is that?
It may not be good for the roots, but it's good for the plant. Okay, so one of the main classes we teach is where does everything belong. So in nature, what happens is the soil is 99.1% mineral below the surface. And University of, I think it was either New Hampshire or Vermont, I think it's New Hampshire, said it's really 100%. They can't find any dead stuff underground. But there's supposed to be 5 inches on average of dead stuff on top of the ground. And that's where your compost belongs, up there, because this is the home of fungi, bacteria, pill bugs, earthworms. That's their home. This is where the plant roots live down here. If you mix the two together, you get a lot of root rot. So the strawberry plant, the leaves are up here, the roots are down here. No, there's nobody in nature that does that. So this part of the plant and, you know, trunks of trees, they're meant to be able to repel the dead stuff. That's the job of the stems, is to be resistant to that process. And the roots underneath here now, strawberries are one of the plants that uses a fungus recycling system. So in theory, if you're doing this really nicely, you'll have a lot of dead stuff up here, and then the mycorrhizal fungi live in both worlds. They attach to the plant's roots, they live up in here, and they decompose the dead stuff and put it right into the roots of your strawberry. So that's how it's supposed to work. Of course, in a pot, it takes, you don't have time for that. If you have a garden that you've been doing real good with keeping the compost on the top or the dead stuff on top and the bottom mineral, then the mycorrhizal fungi are well set up in there. And you put your strawberry plants in there, they should be very happy with that setup. So.
There's a couple questions online. One is, what kind of strawberries is Seascape in terms of, I think, those 3 types of?
That's a everbearer, excuse me, day neutral. Yes, Seascape strawberry is day neutral. It was the best strawberry probably in the 90s. And then Albion showed up and everybody's world changed. Then Sweet Ann and Cabrillo are the improvements over Sweet Ann or over Albion. So.
And second question, is it beneficial to put pine needles around plants?
It would be. I mean, any kind of organic mulch keeps the ground more acidic, which is nice. Provides nutrition. That's also nice. There's nothing wrong with pine needles. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, alpine is Fragaria vesca. And the original ones were not red. They were different colors. So there's got to be, there's probably some other species in there now to make them that red. So. Anything else? All right, thank you.
Thank you. I will now turn the meeting over to Khaled. And if he has any words for us, and then he can adjourn the meeting.
First question on if there were any plants for sale or down at the nursery, do you have strawberries?
We have, yeah, we do have berry strawberries at the store and our potting, so if you want to try that. Sand is bother to carry.
Well, thanks for joining us, Gary. I've known Gary for several years, and when my plants were struggling, I started going to his garden class, learned about soil, got the top pot, and he's helped me out quite a bit. Plants have grown quite a bit, and they're doing well. And I really enjoyed the talks you give, Gary, and the perspective you bring. So thank you for joining us. And I've also been a part of CRFG for, I don't know, 4 years, 5, maybe 6 years now. And when I first got into plants 10 or 12 years ago, I'd always wanted to join CRFG. So I was traveling and moving. It didn't quite work out. But when I moved back, I finally got into it just before the Scion Exchange. That was my the main moving force for getting me into CRFG. And I've learned so much and I've met so many people. I have a lot of friends, both in the group as well as in some of the other chapters. And, I'm really excited for the next couple of years and to see how we can kind of move forward together. So yeah. Thanks. And with that, the meeting is adjourned.